Well, President Barack Obama right there giving us a speech on the State of the Union, and we'll be discussing that a little bit later on. But let me take this opportunity to welcome you now to the lifestyle section of our program, Morning Express. Now, today we're going to be talking about emotional abuse, and it's a form of abuse that may not leave any physical scars on you. Somebody may not be able to look at you and see any physical scars, but that does not mean there are no scars that are left. And unlike physical scars that you can cover up with your clothes, emotional abuse leaves scars that are with you every single day of your life. They manifest in your word, your thought, and even your deed. The danger about it is that sometimes you may not even know that you're emotionally abused. And with me in the studio, I've got a clinical psychologist and a sociologist who we're going to be talking to in just a bit. But first of all, I'd like to talk to Janet. And Janet, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, maybe, yeah?
I'm very well, thank you. Now, Janet, you're one who has gone through emotional abuse.
Yes, sir.
Tell me, how did you first of all find out that you are actually emotionally abused?
For a long time, I had no idea I was being emotionally abused. But you see, it's just the way you feel useless, your self-esteem is extremely low, and you keep on feeling that you're doing everything wrong. Because the man I was married to kept on telling me, this thing like you're stupid, why did you do what you did? And you begin doubting yourself.
So at what point did you discover that you're actually being emotionally abused? Because initially you said that you didn't know. At what point what brought you to discover?
You have a circle of friends, you have people you talk to. But whenever I talk to other people, they were like, oh, you make good points, I like the way you're talking. But you see, back at home, everything I was saying was stupid. It didn't make sense, So I started thinking, what is it? Why is there such a big difference? Then I decided to go for a counseling class. That is when I started seeing that actually I was being emotionally abused.
Okay. You mentioned that while you are emotionally abused, that your self-esteem was dealt a blow.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
If you looked at me even then, I'm someone who's educated. I'm someone who came from a family that is a middle-class family that is doing well. I should have everything that everybody has, and I was working as well. But it didn't make sense that I would behave the way I would. At a certain point, I started keeping to myself. Yes.
Okay. And at this point now, would you say that your self-esteem was good before you got into the marriage, or was it
yes,
the marriage that dealt with it?
It is the marriage that dealt with it. Because before getting married, I was quite a social person. I was a happy girl. In fact, I was known to be a happy girl. Then after that, I think 2 years down the lane, I would avoid people. I didn't want to communicate. I was quite moody most of the time, yes. Okay.
And this being the case,
yes.
Have you recovered?
I am recovering. Emotional abuse takes a toll on you. It's like you start relearning most of these social things after that.
What was your lowest moment now when you remember, now that you're recovering? What's the lowest moment you remember?
God, there are quite a number. But the lowest point I remember was this guy had this habit that if he had a problem, if he wanted to quarrel, he'd wait for you to start eating. So you see, as you start having food and someone is quarreling, you just can't eat. So you see, I would leave the food and start crying and all those things. And it really used to take a toll on me.
Okay.
Sometimes he'd come home and tell you, "Kwani, this food is not cooked well, there was no roiko," something like that.
Okay, let's go to the actual abuse. Would he call you names? Would it start as an argument? Would it be a disagreement? At what point would it start?
Okay, mainly, like after some time, I think 3 years after marriage, this guy would even go and sleep out. So, like when he comes back with these issues like, you know, I had to go out because I can't stand you. You are dirty. You know, you don't know how to cook. So you see, it would start as in an argument and goes on the whole day.
Okay. All right, Janet, just hold on to the line. We'll come back to you. But at this point, I'd like to bring in my guest. And we have Ken Ouko, who's a sociologist. Welcome, and it's good to have you again.
Thanks.
We also have Winnie Kitetu,
yes,
who is a clinical psychologist. And maybe I'll start with you, Ken, as a sociologist. What happens that somebody... they walk down the aisle, they're happy, everything is good, and at some point it turns and it becomes abuse, and not physical but emotional?
Well, one of the things we say about marriage is that it's a revelation. You know, when you walk down that road and eventually start living together, then you start discovering each other, which is something you can hardly do when you're out there. You're dating, you're doing all these things. The whole dating and courtship game is a lot of pretense. Yeah, people show you best foot forward. And then finally when you become domesticated, then the real hyena comes out. So a lot of times the revelation in marriage is what now leads to the biggest problem actually, which a lot of marital couples have: incongruence, marital incongruence. You start discovering that, this is not what I thought. Yeah, so in your mind already you're beset by disappointment, and you're thinking, this is not the guy I married. And you start asking him, where's the guy I married? And vice versa. The guy looks at the woman sometimes and thinks, no, I did the wrong thing. But you already done it, so you're in marriage. And the thing with marriage is that the family and the society is looking at you. So you're supposed to try and make good. But the biggest problem is usually that incongruence. You realize that you're not fitting the wheels together.
You're not compatible.
Yeah, that compatibility starts missing. And then you start questioning each other. The worst part now is when then you start expressing disappointment very early, like 3 years, like she's saying. It should last at least. Yeah, that's pretty early in marriage. Marriage is supposed to last a lifetime. So you should be talking about disappointments maybe 10 years down the road, and you say, oh, you know, this thing is really difficult for me. But if you start that early, then most likely that marriage will become dead as a dodo.
All right, Winnie, do you agree with Ken that the courtship period is a period where people are pretending, as it were? It's like a peacock that's, you know, let out its feathers, and as soon as you get into marriage, then you close those feathers and you see the real person. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree totally with Ken, in the sense that there's a lot of sweet words. You don't, even when you're discussing, you only discuss your education, investments, the number of children you're going to have when you marry, and you never discuss the mental part of it. What is your family history? That one, they miss it out. Something like, you know, my dad was a bully. So even the girl, even the boy will never pick it up. If you're told my dad was a bully, you know, my mom used to be beaten, we never expose that private part of it. So you discover a long way as you get it, because the emotional abuse comes from the past, from the history. And this is something we ignore, something people ignore during courtship, and something we should be discussed actually. So it is true. We cover up a lot during courtship. And when we marry, we imagine it's going to be a bed of roses. It never turns to be, because now the true colors come out.
Okay. Now, one thing that I know characterizes emotional abuse is arguments, outbursts of anger. How can one tell the difference between just an anger outburst? There are people who manage anger differently. How do you tell the difference between an anger outburst and one who is manipulative to the point where they want to emotionally abuse you, Ken?
You know, part of what we need to look out for as couples, or as, you know, marital spouses, is if the anger outbursts are regular. If it's something more of a habitual happening in marriage, then you know you have a problem. But if everybody gets angry, even God gets angry, you know, but if you have a bout of anger that emerges after, say, what, 3 months, or some incidental anger, something you did, and even you feel, maybe this guy is justified for getting annoyed, that's all right, that you can deal with. In fact, marriage is all about that. Fight it out, clean it up. But if this is a regular, habitual, like I call it, a habitual occurrence where somebody just looks for ish, where is the problem here today, even when there's no problem, then you start sensing trouble, because sometimes, true, you're not doing the right thing, yeah? But then you can't keep not doing the right thing all the time. Sometimes in marriage, the idea is to, clover it. You pretend that, okay, this is bad, but let me overlook this. In fact, if you really love someone, then you love them with their faults. Yeah, but if those faults rub you the wrong way all the time, the easiest way is sit them down, and have a chat with them. Yeah, but when you start fighting about it, the problem most guys have is you start talking about it, then it escalates. You start off a good conversation and say, you know what, today you were talking to somebody on the phone and I don't like the way you were talking about it. Instead of laughing about it, the other person says, no, you can't do that. How can you dictate to me the way I talk on the phone? Then you start having a problem. So some of these things are very well intended. Yeah, the emotional part comes much later. In fact, when we refer to it now at that point where it becomes emotional terrorism, is when now in marriage you fear the other person, which is never supposed to happen. You're not supposed to fear your spouse. You're supposed to, be able to bout it out, not physically, and say, this is the problem we have, then let's talk about it. But I think a lot of us fail in having that intelligent conversation in marriage.
Together. Yeah. Now, Winnie, you mentioned that history plays a part and a role in emotional abuse, depending on whether you are abused and whether you saw somebody being abused in the family.
Yeah.
Now, in an incident where you're courting and you're looking for a future partner, do you have to delve into their past? Because that may also feel intrusive.
It's very important to know the past history. And that's why, for example, in the village, when you say you're interested in certain guy or certain girl, the parents, you tell you, hiyo mama ni ya kisirani. What did it mean? Exactly, they knew the family history. So, but today, you're meeting the girl in town, you're meeting them in US or anywhere, you decide to marry, or so wherever you bring, we imagine that we are going to shape the marriage when you're already there. This is a past. And remember, like the way you were asking Ken, that how come the emotions appear later, even in marriage? It is because this person, the person who is an abuser, has some insecurity problem. And for him, he has to fulfill his need. The need for security, the need for self-ground, the need to feel safety, to feel safe. So even when they are courting, occasionally the girl will be seeing that. Occasionally the man will be seeing that, but he assumes, this one will change. When we get married, I know it will not happen. So it is something which it cannot change. And now you realize that it comes into anger outburst, because already he has to do it to be stable. So what does he do? He abuses me. Occasionally he'll tell me off, he'll intimidate me, humiliate me. If I'm late for that date, you see him, like so fuming, he cannot be patient enough. Those are some of the signs you see. And now when they come to marriage, it's even worse.
It becomes worse.
It becomes worse.
Ken said, you unleash.
Yes, the true colors.
All right, I'd like to bring in Janet here, and just a quick reminder that we'll be opening the phone lines and give you the telephone numbers. They'll be scrolling on your screen if you'd like to participate, to let us know what you think. Maybe you're going through some form of abuse and you'd like clarity. We've got some experts here. We've got a clinical psychologist. We've also got a sociologist who is here to help us out on that. But Janet, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Yes, you mentioned that it's after 3 years that you began to feel that you're being emotionally abused. And Winnie here has mentioned history plays a big role and a big part. And I know that you are trying to work things out to, have your relationship go back to where it should be. Have you gone into the history of the person that was abusing you?
Yes, I have.
And what did you find out?
In his history, there's been a lot of, I think, emotional abuse as well, because his parents separated when the children were young, and they had to stay with relatives. So when he tells me what he went through, now that at least I've learned and I'm a psychologist, I understand that most of these things are coming from the childhood issues.
Okay, so what would you advise somebody who is courting? How do you go about finding somebody's history, especially if they're not open to give it to you freely?
Okay, now that might be an issue, because if someone doesn't give you his history, you might never know. But the signs are always there. maybe someone is drinking. Like for my case, I can see the guy was drinking even when we were courting. Maybe had I known what I know, I would have wanted to see more. Yes. Then maybe you look at the older brothers, and there was a lot of history of marriage and divorce, Maybe those are the things I should have looked at and seen that there was a pattern.
Okay. Winnie,
Yes.
how can one, without being very intrusive and seeming very nosy, get somebody's history? Because these are very personal experiences, and many of us we're not cultured to talk about our history, especially when it is negative. We look at it as, hanging our dirty linen. How can one in a courtship get history, or not even in a courtship, even in a marriage, you may see signs of things that you'd want to know, where is this coming from, without being intrusive?
Maybe you can inquire from friends. This person has cousins, has introduced you to sisters, friends, aunties. They might also hide. But the family where you are being born, like for example, if you're from another county, different counties, it's hard to go deep. If you are like a Kikuyu, you're getting to a Luo, it's hard to know the family history of that. But you can inquire, and they can always tell. Then also, discuss, if it's a girl, discuss with your parents, and your parents will also help you get to know this guy better. For example, if a girl is free with the parent or the mother, she'll come and say, this guy, I was waiting for him, he took off, I was in the supermarket, he did not want me to buy this when I bought this. You can tell. So that one, you see the controlling power before. And you can warn your daughter. You can always tell your daughter, this one, there's a problem here. So there are always signs, because he gets out of control, because he has that urge and power to control, because he's feeling powerless. And this comes even when you are now at that age of courtship, occasionally. But if you are a bride child, if you are a girl who has been working with the mother, this time, because you're looking at, now you want to get married, you'll always tell the guy, discuss it with the relatives, with the friends, go even for counseling together, and you'll know. Occasionally, even the bad beats you when you're still dating as a girl and a boyfriend. Remember, abusive, emotional abuse starts in a relationship. It can be to parent and a child. It can also be between a parent and in a marriage relationship. It can also be a boss, or even, so you can always wait. You can always know who is intimidating. You can always tell. You can always learn from the environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ken, she has mentioned something important here, and I'd like you to maybe comment on that. Does emotional abuse always start after marriage?
No. You can tell the signs early. In fact, one of the things I was going to say is the psychologists usually have something they call the BPI, which is behavioral projected inquiry. Instead of trying to ask the guy about himself when you're dating and courting, if you're savvy, if you're good enough, if you're clever, you start inquiring about family, about friends, about cousins and nephews, like she says. Yes, and you keep it away from him, and the guy will very easily tell you, oh, my mom and dad, they're like this, they had this, and it's so easy to pick out incidences. Like they say, the apple never falls very far from the tree. So if you have this guy whose father always used to maraud over the mother, then believe you me, he'll probably pick up some of those traits. Yeah, because we transfer these genetic and behavioral, aspects to our children. And when they talk about imitative behavior, sometimes when you grow up in a family like that, you're actually looking at your parents. And believe you me, we never know it, but children evaluate us every day. So as a child, when you're growing up, you keep looking at mommy and daddy, the way they sit together, the things they do when they're watching TV, when they're in their own world. Children observe very keenly, and you're able to then tell, my parents are like this. So if somebody were to come and ask you, would you say your mom loves your dad? A child would give you a very honest answer. Right. And say, oh, no. But he wouldn't tell the parents, of course. But if you do that projected inquiry, this guy would tell you, I don't think my mom ever loved my dad. And I always tell people, start picking out those things in advance before you go down the aisle. And by the time you're walking this guy down that aisle, you know what kind of a character he is. If he had a night runner in his family, and he keeps going out for exercise in the evening, then most likely.
Those are traits that you should follow.
Yes.
Okay, we have Susan in Nairobi. Susan, good morning. What are your contribution, comments, or questions?
Okay, morning.
Morning.
My name is Susan. I just wanted to comment about a victim of this emotional abuse.
Yes.
For 8 years now.
Oh.
And I've been going through so much. because my husband beat me up home. And because we asked him, when we find TV, he's been talking of somebody else about how he was having fun. And if you ask him, if you are so educated, you are asking him anything. And so you just start abusing him. You don't know your useless, you don't even have value, and he will also keep people of the children. And this has been made even if nowadays they don't talk so much, just decided to just be quiet.
Okay.
And if people and seek for maybe counseling from the maybe parents, when you come back to beat you and tell you, why are you talking about our problem?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Susan, for your call. Winnie, there is a lady who's been abused for 8 years. They've tried counseling, and even when they come back, he still abuses. Where does she start from?
Susan, thank you for your call. Number one, you need to set your boundaries. You have now known that you are living in a home which is abusive. This man, if you trace from history, it may never change. And also, maybe somebody like Susan also, she's a victim. Most likely also she came from a home where it was also abusive, so she becomes a victim. An abuser, the same, comes from a home which was also abusive, so he becomes an abuser because he modeled that behavior from the parents or from the society. Now, Susan needs to, if she wants to stay in that marriage, she needs to set her boundaries. She needs to, first of all, decide the safe ground for her. When is it safe for me? When is this man going to, he's been abusing me, making me feel, defining myself as useless, that I cannot really do anything for myself. She has believed in what she thinks, which is wrong. Maybe she has a potential to be somebody else. So she says a safe ground for her, and also she defines it that in this house, please, we need respect. If you define it in your marriage, even if it's a child, this home, in my life, I need respect. Then the man will slowly start respecting. But what I can tell Susan is that this man, you can't try to change him because he's like that. That's how he gets his comfort, because he's used to. Unless he seeks help, he cannot know. And abuser and the victim also, apparently, they're very elusive. They don't know when they're doing it. So he can't try to change him. She can't change the person. But slowly, she can try to set ground. This is what I like. I like happiness. I want to be safe. I want to be respected in this house. I don't want to be abused. I have right to do this. And the man slowly will start getting, oh, you mean she has changed, what am I doing which is not right? Because this man has deep-rooted wounds which have not healed. And then there are levels of this tormenting and abuse, which occasionally has to try to torment other people, be it a boss, be it a wife, or somebody like Susan, so that he can always stay secure and fulfill his needs. So Susan needs to set your boundaries right, and then tell him, it's a respect I demand. I need to be trusted. I need to be, try to work on him, and then slowly, and if he cannot, then seek help, both of them.
Ken, what keeps somebody in a relationship? For her it's 8 years. I'm sure there are others who stayed longer. What keeps somebody in an abusive relationship, yet they know they're being abused?
You want a bad answer? Love.
Really?
There's this elusive concept called love, which is just a bunch of emotional, networks that we never really understand. And a lot of people actually, if you want now the correct answer, it is circumstance. Yeah, there's so many things about your life that you don't want to change, and each one of us is seeking comfort. You're looking for a comfort zone, mentally and, everything-wise, economically. And once you get into a marriage, for example, you don't want to walk out because, like they always say, there might be worse hyenas out there. So you end up trying to make this one work. And all of us, we spend our lives making it work. Once you go into a marriage, once you go into school, once you go into a job, your effort is directed at making it work. And that's why marriages, survive despite some very horrible atrocities in marriage. But thinking about her case, you have a multitude of spouses who are in that kind of quagmire. And one of the things I always tell people is, look out for, work and relations. Actually, those two things are the key problems when it comes to emotional abuse. What's the guy doing at work? What's happening to him at work? Or vice versa, what's the woman going through at work? Is she being disturbed? Is she unhappy with her occupation? And when they get back home, you're the only available punching bag. Yeah, sometimes it's not so much work, it's relations out there. How does he relate with his family? How does he relate with his friends? And if out there he suffers inferiority, then when he gets back home, now he has to impose superiority. And so a lot of people interchange. Once they're out there, they do their thing, they're probably, abused by the boss and all these things at work stress him. When he gets home, finally, he's in his domain. Yeah, and that's the beauty with the mindset that I'm now in my little kingdom, even if it's just a small room in a slum, but that is his kingdom. And that happens a lot. The worst form of emotional abuse actually is passive, is somebody who never says anything. And women are so good at this, forgive me for saying that. Women are so good at that. You sit there trying to talk to her and she just looks at you. And that's why you have these common examples of like the guy who said recently that one day he woke up and found his wife staring at him in the middle of the night. And when he asked her, what's going on? She said, I love you, I'm just looking at you. But the guy after that never slept a wink.
It's scary.
Yeah, because you're thinking, what is she thinking? Why is she not saying anything? Yeah, so passive emotional abuse is where the other person deliberately withholds their emotions from you. So you are not able to exploit, because sometimes an argument is just as well. In sociology, we call it instrumental conflict. You're fighting, but you resolve it. So when you scream at each other about something, you don't do it again next week. You already screamed at each other about that one last week. So you're actually making yourselves better. The problem is, like I said at the beginning, if you keep screaming about the same thing, then you have a problem. But if there are different issues, for God's sake, in a marriage, scream at each other. It's healthy, because then it creates, it's like going to war. If you're fighting terrorism, you'll kill people in the process, but you've achieved something, and so the casualties are supposed to be the product of the result.
Wow. We've concentrated heavily on emotional abuse in regards to spouses, to husband, wife, and I'm going to come in and also ask what other forms of emotional abuse we can get and from which quarters. But we have Benson, who is calling us from Githurai. Good morning, Benson. Yeah, thank you for calling. Your contribution.
Okay, I'm Benson from Githurai.
Yes, Benson.
I was once emotional abuse by my own sister.
By?
My own sister.
By his own sister,
Yeah, my mom passed away time ago. I never saw her. I only saw her through pictures. And that's why I was forced to live with my sister, who was now elder by then. But when I used to come from school, I tend to tell me that one certain things are not working. And to this day, I'm still picking it up at the same one. They used to tell me. And then when you are meant to use it as a devil, to begin to say words that make me lose even that I should be eating this. And I tend to not good at all. And to this day, I don't even want to hear to listen about what, how our welfare, our well-being. I don't care. Because I felt she was acting arrogant. It's not good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Benson from Githurai. Winnie, he is a gentleman who was abused by the sister, and he never even got to see his mother, and it has created a situation where he says he does not even care about her welfare. How does somebody like that get help?
Most likely the past maybe made him harden, and he grew up in an environment where there was no love at an early age, and this is how he started viewing the world. So he sees the world as a world which is not friendly. He sees the world as a world which is harsh. There's still hope, and he needs also to talk to people who can give him love. I'm not sure whether he's married, because he's in marriage, he's supposed also to look for a partner who can also reciprocate. Now, the sister, probably that was emotional, and I don't know whether he talked about there was beating, so a bit of physical abuse. Maybe they lacked. And because of the mother dying early, they also suffered a lot. So this exposed the sister also to hardened, and she had also no time to laugh. You know, so you need that conducive environment when you have things. So there's still hope. You can still get help. You can still be helped. You can still look for people who can help. This one we also do by changing your attitude and saying, I have to leave. Now, when you cease to live, then you still dwell in the past. You decide, I have to move on. How do I move on? I'm going to get a company of people who are loving. I'm going to go to church and look for people who can love. I'm going to get company of, even if it's going to class. You can't miss people in this world who can give. So it should not dwell in the past, but instead it should not come out where he's stuck and move on with his life.
Ken, who else are we prone to have emotional abuse from?
Before I answer that question, I'm thinking of, he was called Duncan?
Benson, I think.
Benson. He never actually mentioned a father figure, but when he mentions that the demise of the mother, that happened pretty early in his life and you only saw pictures, that points out to what I was saying earlier, that the sister was now carrying the burden of the family on her shoulders. And you know, you're thinking the brother now to her looks like a proper problem that she's not supposed to have inherited. Because your mother passes away and then leaves you with the burden of bringing forth, you know, raising this other boy who's your brother. But that is not supposed to be your burden, really, truly speaking. So already, like I said earlier, work-related occupations, relations out there, that girl then now transfers her problem to the brother. And every problem she has, when she gets home, it's manifest in the brother. But back to what you're asking, most of the problems we have emotionally are usually from people we relate to dearly. People you love, people you care for. Otherwise, your boss cannot emotionally abuse you, because it's just an occupational relationship unless there's something else going on. So the proper answer to that question would be parental figures. A lot of times the parent-child relations are usually emotionally messy. If you have a parent who's a bit aloof or who's a tyrant, they're especially fathers, sometimes they can be tyrants, then that child will have a lot of emotional instability. The other thing is between siblings. Mostly there's this universal thing we talk about, sibling rivalry, and sometimes it's a healthy thing to compete with your brother or sister, like for resources, for success, trying to be the better one. It's a good thing actually even for your parents to watch you fighting, you know, about this and that. But it gets to a point where it gets very vicious. Yeah, and if, for example, there's wealth involved, like you see every time we lose one of these tycoons, the brothers and the sisters are on each other's necks. So the relationship between them breaks down. In fact, much earlier, before the parent dies, they already have a problem. So it only manifests when the parent is removed. But essentially what we are saying is that emotional abuse will only happen if you perceive yourself to be expectant of affection from someone and you're not getting it. Yeah, so it would have to be somebody that you want something from, and usually it's not much, it's not even material. You just want some love, you want some affection, some care, and you're not getting it. Then you start having a problem.
All right, now Winnie, we have a response, great response with quite a number of people who have gone through emotional abuse, and we cannot answer every question now, but if somebody wanted help, how do they contact you? Where would they reach you? Where do they get help from?
Yeah, if somebody wanted help, first of all, this emotional abuse brings about mental problem and psychological suffering. So we're talking about depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorders, and this is something which now, if you need help, you should come to us so that we can deal with it. We are based at the Kenya Medical Association building. This is Senda in Upper Hill. There's Nairobi Mental Health Services. We're on that floor. So KMS Senda Upper Hill, we're on that floor. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll have that scrolling on your screens shortly. But now I'd like to bring in Sophia, and I think Sophia has got a lot of response that has been coming through. Sophia.
Yes, Michael. Great discussion you're having there with the guests this morning and also the callers. And it's good you're asking for where the people can find you, because that's, I mean, all of these are really questions, people needing help. So really an issue that many are suffering from. Ken, I'll put this to you. Dennis from Nyeri is asking, is it possible for a child who's been abused by the parent to grow up to be totally different from the parent? That can you actually break away from that? Because a lot of what also you've said is that sometimes you can always pick from their family background what has been happening, might just replicate with their lives in adulthood. adult, when they're adults. So can one then change the course of what life would mean for them and make it better?
Yeah, RTS, like we say, resolve to succeed.
Okay.
That's what keeps us going. And if you have that resolve, all you need to do is embolden and strengthen it every time. And RTS, if you internalize it, actually carries you each new day you wake up. You look at your Bible or whatever inspirational book you're reading, and you tell yourself, I'm going to work this out. Yeah, a lot of times when we are growing up, we have so many issues that come and just, bombard us from either way. But then if it's coming from your parents, it gets very unfortunate because you're thinking, this is the only place where I'm supposed to get unconditional love.
Right.
But then people like that, surprisingly, if that guy wants to know, they end up being very successful. Because if you have that RTS and you tell yourself, okay, my parents did this to me, I'm going to work it out and show them or show the world that really I can do this. And it helps a lot of people to work harder than a parent who spoils a child and then the child just sits there thinking everything is here.
Yeah. And quickly, maybe shortly, as we wrap up, when is enough enough? Somebody's asking, especially when an abuser will not respect boundaries, because some people try to resolve it by setting boundaries, saying, let's do this and you do the other.
Yeah.
When do you say, if it's a marriage, I need to leave. If it's a relationship, I need to call it quits, even if it's brother, sister, and say, I'll never talk to this person again.
Yeah, you see, some people, they stick into this relationship trying to think that they work it out. And then there's also this one between the spouse where they always imagine, what will people think about me? I want to get people out of that. Let people show your true colors, because I'm not going to be abused, and when I come out, I'm smiling. Let me say I'm not well, so that I can get help. How do I say enough is enough? First of all, when you've been trying it and it's still going on, intimidating you, and then it passes on to children, is abusing the children, is intimidating them. These children are growing up with low self-esteem, no confidence, they are failing in their exams, because simply as a mother, as a father, you have allowed it in that home. So you think it's not beneficial at all. But come out slowly. Don't just come out in pack and go. Because one, it can turn to be physical. It can hurt you. Because remember also, this person is jealous and is going to tie up your economic benefits and everything. So come out slowly, plan for your exit, plan where you're going to keep your children, how you're going to manage life after him, because you have been used to him. But I'm not advocating to divorce in this case. But remember, like yesterday's issue where I saw this girl, the man left with the first wife, now the second girl, and he's already killed the girl. So once he tells you are useless, surely, what am I doing here? Your house when I'm useless? So this is the time you should plan slowly for exit, and you may get a happy life there in front.
Just a quick one.
Yeah.
Whenever, I think the best thing to tell the world is that once you have this problem like emotional abuse, we teach about different levels of divorce. Believe you me, you're already divorced. Yeah, like you're emotionally divorced. So you sit there watching TV and there's nothing going on between you. So the easiest thing is to walk away.
Yeah. So, but plan for the walkout.
Plan for the walkout, not just go.
Yeah.
All right, we still have Janet with us on the line. And Janet, I thank you so much for, first of all, sharing your story. And I hope you've also received and got some help from our panel of guests here.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Janet. And we are wishing you all the best in resolving the relationship. And we are looking forward to happier times. And that's where we are. So we'll now move to Sophia. Sophia.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you indeed, Janet, for joining us. And those other gentlemen as well who shared his story with us. For everybody watching and all of you who have sent messages, we thank you so much. I love what Ken said, because I think that's the bottom line. I mean, for some, it's emotional abuse. Others, it's all manner of challenges they may be facing in life. But the resolve to succeed, I think for me, is the take home, that no matter what is happening, you can always change the tide. It doesn't have to be the same script for you. You can always change that and make things happen and work and become positive. And also think about planning to leave and to walk out. Plan. Don't get upset today and just pack bags and leave without a plan. I guess that element of just taking your time, making sure all is in place for that walkout, because surely some of this, and there have been cases, can truly destroy one's life, even end to taking away of lives. We've seen such extreme cases. So that's emotional abuse. And Michael, great discussion there.
Yes, learning a lot as usual. I have an uncle who used to tell me that you learn something new every single day. The day you stop learning, you grow old. So I'm glad today I'm very young. I've learned so much.
You have indeed, and so have I and many of our viewers, and we thank you for staying with us. Now I want to quickly run us through, because I promised to do this during the show, the State of the Union address with President Barack Obama. So I've just been looking up what he said, because of course we were on air when he was still speaking, addressing the union, or rather the country. So he said, according to him, the State of the Union is strong. Remember, this is his penultimate address. He has 2 more years in power before he leaves. What is interesting that also grabbed the attention of those who are watching this and some of the stories that have been written since is that his approach is that of Robin Hood, where you take from the rich and you give to the poor. So raising taxes for the rich, we've seen him talk about this for a long time, and really just seek ways to fund and bring up those in the lower cadres. The challenge he has, however, is that he does not have, it's not like Kenya, where Uhuru is the president, Jubilee is a majority in both houses. For him, the House and Senate, Republicans are majority, so he does not have that muscle in as far as implementing some of this work he wants done. So it's a tough one there for him, but one of the things he did mention is that no challenge poses a greater threat to the future generation than climate change. So also one of those global conversations we've seen happen did get a mention in his speech as well, amongst other things, which you can read about online.
Yes, and we shall keep you posted as this information continues coming. But this is where we have to wrap it up and be like a ball and bounce.
Yeah, I can imagine you bouncing literally when you said that. Thank you for watching on behalf of everyone that made the show possible. We're glad you watched KTN, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Bouncy ball.
Give me that.